Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this month's live stream. If you're on the right live stream right now and you've been trying to connect for the last half an hour, I have too. But fingers crossed, I've switched to my backup and things should be working now. But if you're watching the replay, drop me drop me a comment, say hello. If you're on the live as well, let me know where you're watching from. Let me know if you're live, if you're on the replay, if you've got questions. I can answer those for you. And if you drop me a comment, even if it's after the live is finished, I will do my absolute best to get to those for you. Anyway, but welcome. We are covering open Q&A in this live stream. So that means any questions that you have for me, I will do my absolute best to cover them for you. If I can't cover them live, I may cover them in the next live stream. So if you want to post up a question for me, head along to ask.itgenius.com. That's ask.itgenius.com. If you're new to the channel, we help small business owners systemize, organize, and scale using Google Workspace and a number of other tech tools in the Google ecosystem. And so we've got plugins, we've got add-ons. If you need a CRM system, if you need a phone system, if you need a task system, if you need a project system, all of those are available for you, and we help you make the most of them. But most of our questions are around Google Workspace. We're well known for Workspace right around the world, and we have customers in 15 countries. We cover Australian and US time zones so far. So if you're in Australia or you're in the Americas and you're interested in IT support or help with your Google Workspace, we have an instant IT support service, so you can get immediate IT support. Just click onto our website, itgenius.com, and choose a quick fix. Or if you'd like a all-you-can-eat package, you can sign up for Concierge, and that gives you access to our support team anytime you need them. You can even get your hands on a dedicated support rep if you'd like as well, to help you with anything and everything in your small business. Okay, without further ado, let's get started. I'm just going to bring a little bit more light into the scene here, and there we go. That's a little bit better. Try and help with my lighting. Otherwise, my editors get very angry if they're not able to see me. Okay, cool. So it looks like the stream is working. It was not working before, but it looks like things are working now. So fingers crossed we stay streaming. But let me know if you can hear me and you can see me. Drop a little hello on the chat. That would be awesome, just to know that everything is working okay with my audio and my video, because I did have to change to my backup. And sometimes when that happens, weird things can happen. So fingers crossed it's working okay. But I'm going to monitor the chat and keep an eye on things. We've got a couple of people on stream here, which is great. Looks like maybe I can even bump up the volume a bit, so my volume's a bit better. But let me know if all is good or if there's any tech problems. And I'll adjust it as much as I can on the fly. Okay, well, without further ado, let's jump into our questions. So you can add to the live Q&A here either by grabbing the QR code or heading to ask.itgenius.com. And our first question today is, where do you save contract information for team and project management and management client communication without giving access to all team members? Well, that's a good question. I guess this person is relating to Google Drive, or asking about Google Drive specifically. So let's go and give them some help with Google Drive and show you how we set things up in Google Drive. Now, if you are interested, I've actually got some pretty in-depth guides on this on the channel. So if you head to, whoops, I should actually go to the actual channel. If you head to our channel, you'll be able to search here for Drive. And I've actually got an in-depth guide on how to set up all of your shared drive permissions, group-based permissions, and basically everything that you need for that. Now you want to do that by looking for, where is the guide? It's about 30 minutes long. It's a big one. Okay, maybe try searching for drive permissions. There we go. Okay, cool. So that guide there will give you absolutely everything that you need to know. So if you're interested in some help with getting your Google Drive permission set up, then go ahead. But I'm going to give this person the basics, because we always get a question on Google Drive, and help them as much as possible. Now, inside Google Drive, when you're on a business plan, you have access to both your My Drive, but then you also have access to shared drives as well. And shared drives here is basically, think of that like your company drive. When the old days we had a server. Oh, and that's weird. My picture is reversed. Hold on, that was. Oh God, why is that backwards? Uh-oh. Okay, give me 1 second. I'm going to fix that. You'll have to bear with me. I'm glad we worked that out now. Video monitor. No, virtual camera. Huh. Well, that's strange. Okay. I'm gonna have to check some settings here. Bear with me for 1 moment, because that's not going to work. Video. Mirror. Okay. The mirror has been disabled. That was a bit wild. Anyway, so here we are back in my shared drives, and this should be fine now. Yes, it looks okay to me. Yes. I'm back in my shared drives, and think of a shared drive like a company drive. So a company drive is like what we used to have on a server. If you had a Microsoft or an Apple server, where you would store all the company information. Now, the important characteristic about a shared drive on a company server was that it was managed by a business or managed by a company, meaning that they had control over it and they could choose what files were put in, what files were put out, who could access, who couldn't access. Now, shared drives inside of Google are pretty much the same thing, the same kind of concept, where you've got a whole bunch of drives. They're controlled by the company. And when they're controlled by the company basically can choose what goes in and what goes out of those files and those folders. So you'll see here, we've got lots of these for IT Genius. I can also be a member of shared drives that are owned outside my company. So you can see here, there's some here owned by Genius Creations. And then if I scroll down, there's some other businesses that I'm involved with that have ownership there as well. So that gives me access to these shared drives, but what do the settings actually look like? Well, if I go to a shared drive here, like my marketing shared drive, the Attract drive, and I go to manage members, you'll see here different groups of staff have different access, and different levels of access give people different privileges based on those different levels of access. So my recommendation for this person, I'm not going to go into detail because I've got so much training on this on the channel already, but if you want to lock down certain things to certain members of your team or certain parts of the company, this is what you would do. You would set up a group, you would apply that group to a shared drive, and then you'd put your sensitive documents in a certain shared drive that only certain groups of people would have access to. So great question. Thanks for that question. I'm not going to spend much more on that one because we've already covered that many times. Okay. Next question. This will be another easy one. How do you edit photos on a Chromebook? Pretty straightforward. You probably just use Google Photos. That's probably the smartest way to do that. Use Google Photos. Chrome does have some apps that will let you edit things. Photoshop, I believe, now runs in the web. You could also use Canva as well for some very light photo touching. There is an Android app for Lightroom, I believe, that you could install on a Chromebook if you really wanted to. But for basic touch-ups, Google Photos is probably your best bet. It's integrated to the Google ecosystem, so that makes things a little bit easier. I don't know if Chrome OS has any native integration with Google Photos. From memory, it doesn't. But that's probably the easiest tool to get access to without, signing up for a paid plan to anything else. Google Photos is free and gives you pretty decent photo editing there. But good question. Thank you for that one. Okay, and I'm just going to go ahead and check my live chat here and make sure things are working. Okay, we've got people watching, but no one's commented yet. So please say hello if you're watching. I just need to triple check that audio and video is working okay. I can see you watching. I can see you watching. I can see how many people are watching right now. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna move on now. I'm gonna cross my fingers and hope that this is working. Hope is the best strategy. I don't know about that, but I'm going to hope. All right. Here's a more meaty one. If we hire Jim and give him an email, and then Jim quits, I then hire Janet, Can we use Jim's email by simply changing his name and putting in Janet's name so that Janet can have an email? Well, that is definitely a great question. My strong recommendation is that you don't do this, and I want to tell you about why. So, in a business, we end up with a number of different email addresses as we accumulate staff and team in the business. Now, let me do a quick little drawing for you. I'm going to rely on my Steiner education skills to do this. Let me open up my Canva here. Okay. And so we all business end up with mailboxes. Now, I like to think of these as buckets of email. And let's say we've got a bucket for Peter, we've got a bucket for Mary, and we've got a bucket for John. And each one of these is going to have their little at your business. In my case, it's itgenius.com, right? You're going to have your domain name under each one of these mailboxes. Now, of course, each one of these mailboxes we have to pay for. So each one of these is going to have a license cost. So for each bucket of email, we're going to pay for one user license. Now, there's some intricacies with this. If you're a really big company, you can have some people on an expensive plan and other people on a cheaper plan. It's only available if you've got like a whole bunch of staff. If you are, for example, interested in having a shared mailbox, well, people have the ability to share access to their mailbox between each other. You can have aliases. So an alias is an extra email address that maybe gets delivered into one of these mailboxes, right? So that might be an alias that comes in. It might be, info at. But broadly, each bucket of email, you got to pay for one license. So I've got next to each one of those. Okay, great. So this customer is saying, all right, let's just go ahead and clean things up a little bit here. So this customer is saying that Mary has left the business, or Jill or Bob or whoever it is, but let's just go with Mary. We say, right, Mary's left the business. Can we just delete Mary's name and put in Bob's name there? We've decided no more women in this business, just Bob. Right, Bob, Peter, and John. Now, yes, technically, you can go to Mary's mailbox and you can rename that mailbox and just, boom, plonk Bob's name in there. And then what Bob is going to get is all of the history, right? All of Mary's inbox, outbox, sent, chats, Google Drive, web history, internet usage history. Can we see that maybe this isn't the best idea? Yes, you can do it, but definitely not a good idea. Here's what I would do instead, and this is what we recommend. So this is Mary's mailbox here. Mary's mailbox stays there with all of her stuff, and Bob joins the company, right? So we'll create a fresh mailbox for Bob over here. That's Bob's nice new fresh mailbox. Now, we're going to take Mary's mailbox and we're going to archive it. Now, I've got other videos on the channel about our staff offboarding process that go into a bit more detail on this process. But what we're going to do with Mary's mailbox is we want to actually keep her data. We don't want to throw out Mary's data just yet, because all of that stuff that Mary has is pretty important. All of her history, her email exchanges back and forward. We don't want to actually lose that stuff. So what we actually recommend doing is setting up an archive mailbox. Now, let's move our archive mailbox. Just going to choose a different color. Let's put our archive mailbox, over here. Cool. Now, the archive mailbox is basically the dumping ground for anytime we have historical data and we don't want to hold on to that data anymore. So we take any of the information from our other mailboxes and we migrate that into the archive mailbox. So all of Mary's stuff from Google Drive, all of Mary's emails, any of other history from Mary's account, all gets put into that archive mailbox. And the only thing that Bob really needs now for him to be able to be productive in his work is definitely he'll need anyone who emails Mary to automatically be forwarded to Bob, right? Because if Bob is replacing Mary's role, you probably want someone who's emailed Mary to automatically have it land in Bob's mailbox. If Mary's got relationships with your customers, you want that to automatically come through to Bob, right? And my opinion is you probably don't want them to get a bounce back. If you just delete Mary's account, they'll just end up getting a bounce back. Not nicest experience for the customer, right? So we are going to make Mary an alias on Bob's account. Setting up an alias is pretty straightforward. We're going to go into our admin panel. That's admin.google.com. You're going to sign in. Thank you, Google, for keeping me secure. My fingerprint reader on my computer just never seems to work. So this always takes me a minute to sign in. No, still no. I've got to hit it enough times for it to fail, and then I can actually sign in. All right. So to create an alias is pretty straightforward. We're going to go to our directory and then our users. And you're going to open up the mailbox of the person you want to add an alias to. Now I'm going to use Andrea's account as an example here. I'm going to open up user information. And that's where if I want, I can add an alias using alternative email accounts. Now, in this case, let's imagine this was Bob's account. I would add mary@mydomainname.com. And if you've got multiple domain names, you might choose to add multiple aliases just to make sure that everything's covered. Cool. So that's adding an alias. Let's come back. Here we are. Now, final step. It's possible that you might want Bob to be able to access Mary's historical stuff, right? Her old emails, maybe not the chat messages, but definitely old stuff that's in the mailbox. Bob, you could then use delegate access to give access to the archive account. Now, in most cases, you only share delegate access to the archive account to a senior leader, a business owner, or a manager in the business. You probably wouldn't give access to that willy-nilly because the archive account is, or what we use it for, is all of the history of all of your employees. And so my recommendation would be to be careful who you give delegate access to that. You can see some of our other videos on the channel about shared mailboxes and delegating access to show you how to set that up. It's pretty straightforward, but you can share access to the archive mailbox to anyone else in the business. This is the best way for you to offboard an employee, retain their most important data, give your customers a good experience so that they don't get a weird bounce back message and wonder what's happened to Mary. And for your new starter, Bob, to start with a clean slate, so he doesn't have a mess of historical information in an account that he's inheriting, but still get access to information when he needs it, if he needs it. And throughout this process, we don't lose any data, and the account that was previously used by Mary is able to be shared to the right people at the right time. Great question. I like that one. Hopefully my explanation made sense for you guys. We see this happening pretty often in a context where you have like a physical presence. Maybe you've got a allied health studio. That's a really common one. And you've got a couple of podiatrists in the back rooms. But at the front desk at reception, you've got a shared role between 2 or 3 different people who are studying at university and doing a part-time job in your practice. And when that happens, typically what people do is they have like one reception mailbox and like 3 or 4 people are logged into it, which is not great for security because someone leaves the business, they've still got the password. You're probably not rotating the password every time you get a new person in. Maybe the password's even on a sticky note on the computer screen. I've seen these kind of things happen all the time. So what suits better is to have a shared mailbox, and then multiple people can access that from their own individual accounts. I've got other videos on how to set that up as well. But the key thing here is that you don't roll over all of the history into somebody's new account when they join the business. If you need a shared mailbox and multiple people to access that shared mailbox, that's different, and that's fine. I've got that covered in other videos, but this was a good question. Okay, I'm going to check that everything is working here. Cool. G'day, Arpan. Thank you for joining live. Does Google Workspace have an HR clock in, clock out app? No, it does not. But if you're really savvy and you've got the time, you could probably build one pretty easily in AppSheet. So AppSheet is Google's online low code or no code business app creator, and this is the kind of thing that effectively lets you build like mini databases and mini apps, and you can then deploy them either to mobile devices or you can keep them built online. So yeah, pretty cool stuff that you can build with that. I would recommend considering that if you wanted to build a business app of sorts using Google. It's the kind of thing that my general opinion is to avoid it for small business owners. It's the kind of thing that you can get sucked into losing 5 or 10 or 100 hours in, and it's better to outsource something like this to someone else who's a computer science engineer who can actually build things. If you're a business owner, you've probably got too many other things on to spend all day building this, unless that's all you want to do, or unless you've got a team that's large enough that you don't want to have to build other things in the business. You just want to build this. So that would work. I do a little bit of this kind of thing inside my business, but taking on a technology project like this is really the job of a technical person, a CTO, a technical officer, or engineers, especially for the building out. So my recommendation would be to avoid trying to build something yourself if you're a small business owner. If you want to look at something off the shelf, where you could use an app like Harvest, we have a HR app which is called Bamboo HR, which we really love. There's a number of solutions out there that you can use for people to do check-ins and checkouts pretty easily. And there's time billing included in Asana. We're big fans of Asana here at the channel. And if you're interested in something less for check-in, check-out, and more for like time billing, then Asana's got time billing built into the tasks. So that could be an option for you as well. But good question. Thanks for answering that one. Okay, let's move on to our next question. Is it ideal to use personal events or appointments in Google Workspace Calendar, but keeping it private only for me? This is a great question. Let's talk about managing events in Google Calendar, and especially managing personal events for business owners or anyone else who wants to keep something private, potentially. Now, inside Google Calendar, it's pretty straightforward. You'd be familiar with the interface, and you've got lots of different options there for keeping yourself organized. You can see here I've got a number of different events. Some of these are even on different colors. I've even got multiple calendars set up here as well. And so scrolling down on the left-hand side, I can choose between different calendars to be visible or non-visible. Now, for most people, one calendar is enough, and it's pretty straightforward to open up an event on your calendar just by dragging and dropping. With that event, I can choose whether I make this public or private, and I can do that by going down to visibility down the bottom here, and you'll see if I want, I can choose to make this event private. Now, what does private mean? Well, private means that anyone who has access to see my calendar, which is the default inside Google Workspace, or my colleagues will be able to see my calendar. If I choose to make a single event private, they'll be able to see all the information on my calendar. But this one, they'll just see busy. It'll just say busy. They won't see the information. They'll just see busy. So, for that, midday, should I make a joke here? Like for the midday strip club meeting or your therapist's appointment, that's the kind of thing that you might want to keep private from your colleagues, right? And so those you may choose to make private. And that's just simple solution, right? One calendar, simple solution. Now that can be used by anyone. You can even, as you can see there, set the default for your calendar to put everything as private. Although if this is a primary work calendar and you're spending most of your time working with your colleagues, you probably don't want to make that private because especially with remote teams, you want to be able to let your team know like what you're up to. If you're on lunch, they might know that it's okay to interrupt you with a chat message. If they're trying to schedule a time with you, they might know that you've got a standing meeting on Wednesdays, which is, I don't know, when you've carved out some time to do XYZ task, but they know that you might be flexible to squeeze in a meeting in that time. You can see here that I've got content creation scheduled for my Thursdays. That pretty much means to the team, don't bother me unless it's absolutely urgent. Whereas on other days, I mind if they flick me a message. So you'll want to, I guess, check in with yourself and your team on what's most appropriate for you. But my recommendation is for your calendar events to be shared with the team, and then private is literally only for private events. Now, let's take it up a notch. If you're a business owner or you're an extra busy person, or maybe you have a family and you want to manage events and things happening with a significant other, well, it might make more sense to use multiple calendars potentially. And the cool thing about Google Calendar is even on my business calendar, I can actually get access to a personal calendar from outside my business if I wish. Now, you'll see here that I've got multiple business accounts, and one of those is actually a personal domain. So technically, it is a Google Workspace account. So technically, it is a business Google account, but this would work just fine if you were using a Gmail account as well. Now, I've got other videos on the channel on why and when you might choose to use a Google Workspace account for your personal data, what the pros and cons of that are, because there are some pros and cons of doing that. But in this example, I just want to show you my calendar and how I have things configured. Now, I actually have a personal consulting company outside of IT Genius. I do some coaching with business owners from time to time. I also have other business interests outside of IT Genius. And for that, I have calendar events that I can put outside of my IT Genius calendar. The reason for that is if one day I sell my position in IT Genius and I hand over my email address and my calendar and my accounts and all that kind of thing, I don't necessarily want my other business dealings that are completely separate from IT Genius to be inside that account, because it's not really appropriate for the information or the details of those meetings to live inside the IT Genius calendar. So when I go to create an event here on what is effectively my personal calendar or my personal business consulting company, I'll create an event here and you'll see automatically it's in a different color. So I can identify immediately which event this is relating to. If it's dark blue, it's IT Genius. If it's light blue, it's something else. I've also got another calendar for personal events. Now, this one is purple. If I create an event here, and this is owned by my personal consulting business, so it's owned by my personal Google Workspace account, I can choose to put it on my personal calendar, and that will show up in purple. Now, these two calendars live under my personal Google Workspace account. If you were using a personal Gmail account, it would work exactly the same. They are owned by this account, and all I do is with each one of these calendars is I share them back to my business account. So you'll see here, this has been shared to peter@itgenius.com. I'll go back and find my personal calendar as well. That one has been shared to peter@itgenius.com. What that means is if I go back to my IT Genius login, I can see the two new events that have just been placed on the calendar here, but I can also edit and modify those events. So I've always got access to them. Now, the brilliant thing about this is these show up on my phone, so I can see all of my events in one place. And these calendars live like kind of integrated with each other. So they can all see each other. And no matter where I am, I can edit the events here. But what this means using this system is that my staff don't see what's on my personal consulting calendar, except for my PA. And nobody sees what's on my personal calendar, the purple one. That's things like my friends' birthdays, if I've got a dinner planned with family, no one really needs to see that kind of stuff. And that's the kind of thing that I want to keep private to myself. So if I've got that midday visit to the strip club or meeting with my psychologist booked, the kind of thing that I don't necessarily want to share with my staff, I'll be making sure I put them on my purple calendar. Or if I've got an external meeting that doesn't really make sense to be alongside IT Genius data, I'll put it on my blue calendar, which is my personal business calendar. So that way of setting up Google Calendar basically means that I've got all my data owned by me outside of my company. So I can sell that company or I can leave that company. And if you're an employee in somebody else's business, this is probably a smart setup for you to use. It means that your calendar events are yours and you'll never lose access to them even after you've left the company that you're currently working from. Now, the setup is slightly more complicated than using just one calendar. When I create a calendar event, there's that extra drop down that I've got to select, and I've got to think about, do I want to put a personal calendar or do I want to put this on my business calendar? But the thing that I love about this is that I'm not tied to just one calendar, and I don't have to worry about having my personal data exposed to people either inside the business or someone else who gets access to that data one day. Cool. All right, that's a great question. That's a really good one. I'm going to mark that off as ticked. Okay. Oh, and I better check the comments too. No more comments. Okay, that's good. Gee, some more light would be nice here. It's a very dark and gloomy day. Okay. Every time I flick to a white page, my lighting gets better. Okay. If I have a Workspace basic paid subscription, then how many email addresses can I create? Okay, good question. Each time you're working in a Google Workspace mailbox, you will pay per bucket of email. And so if I decide to draw out the buckets of email in my business, here's Sarah, here's John, and here's Peter. Each of these will have an email address attached to it. If it's at itgenius.com, at itg.com, at itg.com, then each one of those, helps if I actually show you the screen. Each one of those will have to pay for their email address. Now, there is a workaround. We can also add aliases to a mailbox. When we add an alias to a mailbox, we don't get charged. So let's say, for example, I want media inquiries for the business to go to Sarah, but I don't want the public email address for media to just be sarah at itgenius.com. I would say media at itg.com is an alias for Sarah at itgenius.com. And an alias is pretty straightforward to set up. You go into the Google Workspace admin panel. You go to directory and then to users. You choose a user that you'd like to add an alias for. And then you click on user information, alternative email addresses, and you add the alias there. In this case, it's going to be media at itgenius.com. Okay, so what other email addresses can we create? Well, we can also create a group email address. Give this one a different color. Okay, so let's say, as an example, that group email address is something like info at my company, right? And info is going to be used. Oops, let's try type that. Let's try write that again. Info. Now, let's say that's going to be used as a distribution group. This is important. A distribution group or just a group email address, also it works at itgenius.com. Forgive my terrible handwriting here. Barely legible. And what a group mailbox does is it receives email and it places a copy in the mailboxes of the members of the group. So they get a copy of each email that comes in. But you don't have to pay for a distribution group. So that's an email address that works, but you don't have to pay for it. That's a free email address. Now, the final step that you might be interested in creating is a shared mailbox. A shared mailbox is a mailbox that includes data itself, but it's shared to multiple people, or multiple people can access it. Well, if we set up a shared mailbox, that's different again. This time, it's a bucket of email. And that bucket of email can be accessed by multiple people, depending on who you share access to. And that's called delegated access. And we've got other videos on the channel on how to set up delegated access to a mailbox. A shared mailbox is a bucket of email, and those emails live in the bucket. When you've got a distribution group, nothing lives in the bucket. They all just get distributed out to the mailboxes. But when you have a shared mailbox, they live in the bucket. Now, this would be most appropriate for something like sales at your company, right? Because you might have 2 or 3 different people who are using that mailbox, and they need to access that mailbox. And when they read the list of emails that are in there and reply to one of them, you want to mark it as read so everybody knows that that email has been read. That's what we use a bucket of email for. And guess what? Because it's a bucket, we have to pay for it. So they're the kind of email addresses that you can create. The simplest way to remember it is that you pay for each time you create a bucket of email, but you can create some free email addresses like aliases or distribution groups. A distribution group is effectively an alias that goes to multiple people. And then shared mailboxes, because they're a bucket, you've got to pay for those. But good question. Thank you for that one. Always love how many questions we get. Okay. All right. We've got a question from Power of Option. Not sure what your name is, but welcome. Thank you for being here. I do have one basic Google Workspace, and I've added 3 more users. The question is, can I update only one of these users to a higher version? No, you cannot. So if you're a small business and you're looking to do what's called split billing, and if you search the channel for split billing, you'll see there's other videos on this as well. Unless you've got at least 30 or 40 or 50 staff, and we request it and we have to ask Google very nicely, split billing is not available, unfortunately. So that means having one staff member or one group of staff on one plan and another staff member or another group of staff on another plan. It would be great to save some money, obviously, but no, unfortunately not available. Anwar, thank you for being here. So can't do it if you've just got a couple of users. If you've got, the minimum threshold used to be 300, and then they dropped it to 100. And then my sales team tell me if they ask very nicely, some companies of 20 or 30 or 40 people have been able to get access to it. So I can't promise that, but you can chat to our team and we'll do our best. We'll do our best to assist you with that. Don't know, can't promise it, but it is available only for larger businesses. Thanks for asking, though. That's definitely a good question. We get that one a lot. Okay. Next question is from Daniel. Can you show us the steps to turn on calendar work hours in the admin panel? And I assume what this person is referring to, or they must be, is setting your work hours inside of Google Calendar. So I'm here inside my Google Calendar. I'm just going to try and find right spot for my camera. Okay. So I'm here inside my Google Calendar, and inside my personal settings inside Google Calendar, I'm going to go ahead and open up my settings here. I can set my times that I work. So if I scroll down here, I'm going to find my working hours and my working location. Now, I personally travel quite a lot and I work from the road quite a lot as well. So I don't really have a fixed travel location, but I do set my travel location manually, and I'll show you how to do that in a moment. I tend to only have scheduled meetings and work days on Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And you can see here, I've specified my working hours that I'm available for the team and for meetings. I haven't chosen to specify a working location, but that's okay. That's what works for me. Now, if you don't see this option available in your Google Workspace right now, well, you can actually set it up in the administrator panel to enable this for your team members. And I will go and find where that setting is now. Now, I haven't touched this setting in a long time, so wish me luck finding it. To open up our Workspace admin panel, we're going to go to admin.google.com. And then usually finding a setting in the admin panel, the easiest thing to do is search. So I'm going to search for calendar settings and maybe work hours. Let's see if I just put the name work in there. I'm going to assume it's here in settings for calendar. Let's open that up. Okay. So you can see here under sharing settings, which is up the top, nice and easy. There's a setting here to choose whether you allow users to set their working location. And there's even some prompts here to choose their working location. That's pretty cool. Calendar shows a banner to users who have not set their working location. Oh, that's very interesting. Okay. I can even say remind them up to a certain number of days if they've not yet set it. That's very cool. Okay. Set your work. Oh, you can even set the text. Very cool. Oh, you can even write a custom. This is very in-depth. Anyway, all you need to do is tick this box. set location, and that allows you to have your team members set their working location. Pretty straightforward. Tick the box there, and then it's good to go. Then each one of your team members will be able to, and these policies take 5 or 10 minutes to be deployed. But from there, each person will be able to go into their settings inside their Google Calendar and set this. Now, what if, for some strange reason, you only want that to apply to a certain number of staff? Well, that's okay. Inside our Google settings, if we're inside our, for example, settings for calendar. Oh, I need to like discard. You have unsaved changes. That's weird, but there's the save. Okay, cancel. Great. All right. So here, when I'm applying settings, it's going to by default apply it right at the top level, right? Things for IT Genius, it's going to apply this right across the whole organization. Yet, if I choose to only apply that to a certain group of staff, well, then I would use one of our organizational units here. So I would first click on the organizational unit. And then from the organizational unit, I would then choose to switch on or switch off the setting. Pretty straightforward there. That's just how organizational units work inside Workspace. We've got some other videos on Chrome policy that cover that as well, if you want to deploy certain settings just to certain people. But from there, you're going to get the setting appearing here. Now, what if you want to set your working location and you're moving around and you are going to be on vacation for a week, or you're going to be working from a different location for a week, and it's not necessarily going to be a repeating norm, but you do want to be able to set it for certain days or certain times? Well, the easiest way to do that is actually to just go to your calendar and drag and drop over the days that you're going to be working somewhere different, and then release. And you can see here, this is how you access the out of office menu if you want to set an out of office for multiple days. But you can also set your working location via this menu as well. And it's going to update it just for those days that you've selected. You can choose between different office locations that are automatically selected. Otherwise, you can type in another location and literally choose any place in the world, and you can add that location in there, even if it's a kind of nondescript name like Outback. I've been touring the Outback recently, and so that's how I set my location. Now, anybody who opens up my calendar will be able to see where I'm working from. And that little prompt there means that, okay, great, my colleagues are going to be able to see where I'm working from if that's important or useful to them. If you're a hybrid team and you've got some staff members working from home, some of your staff members are working from a co-working space or an office, some of your staff members are traveling while they're working, this is a really useful feature to know kind of where people are, where you're expecting them to be. And of course, if someone's got like a holiday setup or a flexible work type arrangement, this makes it easier for your colleagues to stay up to date. Love that question. That is a great one. Okay. Taken care of. Anonymous asks, does Google have a VoIP phone service for small business that would work with VoIP DECT phones? Oh, that's a good question. The only VoIP service that Google have is Google Voice, and I don't know if that supports DECT. Let's Google it. Google Voice DECT. The challenge with Google Voice is Google Voice is not available everywhere. That's the challenge. It's not available in Australia, so we haven't really had our hands on it. Add a desk phone. Interesting. Look, I can't say for sure because I have not yet tested it myself. But it does say there are some desk phones which can work. Looks like some Obi-Hi phones. Poly. Oh, I think Poly bought Obi-Hi, so Poly probably stands for Polycom. So yeah, I'd say do some Googling and research that. I can't say much more myself on that one, unfortunately. Would love to, but I cannot. Okay. Okay, I'm setting up Google Workspace. What should my MX records be? My Gmail was working perfectly fine, but I transferred my domain to HostGator and my Gmail broke. Well, this happens all the time, and thankfully, if you go to our channel and search DNS, we've got a number of different videos helping you sort out your mail issues if right now your emails are not working. Right from the basic troubleshooting steps to see what might be wrong, down to an in-depth guide in how to actually implement both DNS, SPF, DKIM, and DMARC, which are all of the anti-spam policies that you need configured inside your DNS to make sure that your emails get delivered and don't go to spam, and to stop people pretending to be you on the internet, potentially scamming your staff or your customers. Now, someone's asked a very specific question of what should the MX records be. Let's have a look at those, and I'll give you a bit of an explanation of what MX records actually are. So the easiest way to find Google's MX records is literally to type in Workspace MX records and open up the Google Help Guide. Wonderful. Cool. Okay, so we have a couple of different versions of MX records for Google Workspace, and this depends on when you actually signed up to Workspace in the first place. So here you can see that if you've signed up since April 2023, you're able to just set one Google Workspace MX record in your DNS settings. If it was before 2023 and this would have shown up inside your Google Workspace setup guide, you'll need to set up multiple records here. Now, what is an MX record and what do they actually do? Well, your domain name has a bunch of settings on the back of the domain name, and they basically tell internet traffic where to go. You've got a few different types of records, and those different types of records have different jobs. The A record or the www record are records that point to your website, and they tell the internet where is your website hosted. If someone wants to type in the website in Google or into the URL of their browser, where should they actually go? And that's generally going to point to a web server somewhere. It might be on cPanel, it might be on Wix or Squarespace, and you're probably going to be punching in an IP address or maybe a hosted host name, which is basically like a virtual address for your website. MX records are your mail records. It actually stands for Mail Exchanger, MX. And what they point to is, where are your emails hosted? So where should someone go to send you an email? And that is usually going to be Microsoft or Google or another email provider, sometimes also on your web host. But your MX records dictate what happens. Now, there are other records on a domain name, like text records. They are used to add additional information to your domain name. Verifying that you own it is the most common use for a text record. But it can also be used for things like anti-spam, SPF, DKIM, basically dictating who can send and receive mail on your behalf of your domain name. And we've covered those in other videos. But I want to talk about your MX records. And why do we need multiple MX records? Well, in the past, we had challenges with IT infrastructure, in that from time to time, a provider would go down and something would change, or for redundancy, we would need to have multiple servers to make sure that things were kept up and online. Now, the way to get around that when you were setting up your MX records is, if your primary mail server was down, there would be backup mail servers. And those backup mail servers would be there to receive the email if, for some reason, the primary mail server decided to go down. And for the most part, that worked great. Mail servers don't go down all that often, but just in case, the settings were there if they needed to. But these days, Google have so many redundancies built into their platforms. Effectively, you only really need one MX record to be configured if you're on a newer account, because Google takes care of all the extra redundancy in the background. So the only difference between having 5 mail records here if you've got a slightly older Workspace account, and 1 mail record if you've got a new account, is the age of your Workspace account. Either way, it doesn't really make much difference, but Google have made it simpler for anyone with a new account to just use 1 mail record. It is important that you follow the correct instructions, and so it wouldn't hurt to go inside your Google Workspace account in the admin panel, go to the setup guide, and from the setup guide, just triple check what Google is instructing you to do, if there's any ambiguity on which one of these you should be using. Okay, that's a little overview of mail records. If you need any help, or if you'd like instant support from our team to resolve a DNS issue, click on the link down below and you can start an instant chat session with our team during business hours. We look forward to serving you then. All right, I am on to my last question. Lucky me. Okay, cool. Last. Armands is asking, with Google Workspace 2,000 email send limit, will that be per domain within the same Google Workspace account? So if I have 7 different domains within one Workspace account, does that mean I have 7 times 2,000 emails per day? Or is it actually right across the Workspace account? That's a good question. I'm not actually sure about that. So I think we'll do a little bit of a Google round, and we'll see if we can find it. So if I search for Google Workspace sending limits, it should bring up our help guide for Gmail sending limits. My understanding is these are a per user limit, but we'll see what it is. Okay, so to keep systems healthy and accounts safe, Google numbers the messages people can send per day, the number of recipients per message, blah, 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 blah. Okay, cool. So paid account, license limits for paid accounts. After you... Okay, your sending limits increase once you've paid money. Yeah, this all just stop spamming. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. Daily sending limit per user account is 2,000 emails. 1,500 for mail merge, previously called multi-send. So basically 1,500 per user account. Let's have a look here. If there's any limits on a per business account, recipients per message, that's fine. Yeah, fine. Total recipients per day, fine. External recipients per day and unique recipients per day. Now, this doesn't say anything about limits per domain. So this just looks like limits per user. So if you had 10 users, this seems to say that each one of them can send 2,000 limits per day per account. Now, I would get a bit concerned when I get questions like this on the channel, because part of me thinks, is this somebody who would like to be spamming and they're looking for the limits here? This is the article that you need to read. I think these are pretty reasonable limits. And if you're doing more than 1,500 messages a day in a newsletter style format or some kind of like mass mail campaign, you probably don't want to be using your Gmail account. My strong recommendation would be to consider it's called a enterprise mail sending service or transactional email service, or at a minimum use MailChimp or Infusionsoft. There's many automated and purpose-built mailing platforms if you have a large email list and you want to send bulk email to people. Because if you don't get this right, you run the risk of your account being switched off, and nobody wants that, because that'll bring your whole business to a stop. Okay, I think that's it. We will wrap it up there. Thanks so much for joining. If you're on the live, please make sure you come along next time. You can grab that QR code, drop in a question, and I'll answer it on an upcoming live. If you've not yet connected with our business, please head along to itgenius.com. You can get access to instant on-demand IT support whenever you need it via our quick fix service. If you've got something that you need help with immediately, you can start chatting to the team. Start a chat down in the bottom right-hand corner, and they'll be there to help you out. Cloud Concierge is our all-you-can-eat IT service. And so if you're a small business owner and you want an IT team who's got your back, well, my strong recommendation would be to consider Cloud Concierge. And we have a free consultation available for all business owners, whether you're a sole operator, right up to tens, hundreds, or even thousands of employees. Maybe you're an IT manager if you're in a large organization, or you're the person who's been slapped with the job of being the IT person. Doesn't matter who you are, reach out and have a chat to us. Even if you're a sole operator doing everything yourself, we have very affordable plans for people at all stages of business. So I'd recommend you do a free consult with our team. Let them know where they're at. Just let them do a health check with you. We'll check in what's going on with your Workspace account and help you get the most out of it. Thank you so much for joining. If you're on the live, please make sure you say hello, and I will catch you in the next live. Make sure you submit your questions at ask.itgenius.com. That is ask.itgenius.com. And I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.